everyone. Welcome to ETBrandequity. Today, we have an absolute honor to introduce the iconic thought leader in customer service and experience space, whose expertise in transforming ordinary interactions into extraordinary experiences has earned him the title of the customer service guru, Mr. Shep Hyken, who can also be called as a James Bond of CX. Am I right, Mr. Hyken?
That's great. Thank you very much. It's great to be here.
Welcome to ETBrandequity. Shep, today we have the privilege of tapping into your profound wisdom as we explore how India can elevate its CX game to unprecedented levels. So, correct me if I'm wrong, with over 3 decades of experience as a CX expert, a renowned speaker, best-selling author, and trusted advisor to countless organizations worldwide, I guess you have been the jack of all trade and master of all as well. So, if I ask you all these years of understanding of CX, what would you like to say, and what do you think most brands miss deciphering when it comes to customer experience? Over to you.
Sure. Well, first, I don't think I'm a master or a jack of all trades.
And master of all as well. Master of all as well.
I focus in this one lane, and that is, customer service experience and anything related to that. And I think that, gosh, that's a great question you ask. And there's, if you ask me the same question tomorrow, I might give you a little different answer, but I'm always going to come back to some of the same things. And that is, when it comes to great service, the experience, regardless of where you are in the world, where your company's located, what type of business you're in, it really comes down to, is this a business that wants to be customer focused? And it starts with leadership, deciding that. I wrote a book, number of years ago, The Cult of the Customer. And I talked about how there could be a force within, and that's one employee that is like totally customer focused, surrounded by people that aren't, trying to influence all those people. But the reality of it is, it needs to come from the very top. Leadership needs to define what the experience is supposed to look like for the customer. They need to communicate this often. They need to train everybody to it. And this is really important. Even people that aren't on the front line need to recognize their role. As far as leadership and management and supervisors go, they need to be the role models and emulate the behavior. You treat the people you work with the way you want customers treated. So far, you've probably figured it out. It's all about the culture. And finally, if somebody's out of alignment, get them back into alignment, coach them, teach them, mentor them. By the way, it may not just be one person. It could be a group, a department. If you're an international company, it could be part of a region in another part of the world. Mm-hmm. So keep everybody in alignment with that service vision. And then I'll add one more thing, and that is, when it's working real well, I want everybody to know it. So we should celebrate success when we have it. So back to your original concept, your question, what do most companies, don't do or forget or leave out? It's real simple. They don't start at the top, and they don't build it into the culture. Customer service is not a department. It's a philosophy that gets embraced by everyone in an organization.
Okay, that's cool. And you're very much right about the leadership part. So, Shep, we already spoke about what are some of the nuances that brands kind of miss out when it comes to CX. So, we often talk about the heavy loaded jargons and ignore what really needs to be done at the ground level. So, how can a market like India basically understand its customers better? So, if I'm talking about the market like India, I'm asking you this question because India is a sensitive market, price sensitive market. And the buyers are usually a little more impatient and demanding in comparison to other countries. So, how to hold on to the consumers of a diverse economy like India?
Wow, that's a great question. And so many times when I'm asked to talk and speak about service, they want to know what's happening in the US. Well, I'm definitely not an expert at what's happening in India and other parts of the world, but I do know this: personalities are different. And I don't care what part of the world you're in. You could be dealing with difficult customers, impatient customers. And if that's the typical customer, well, then you have to learn to adapt to that style. Many years ago, I learned about the concept of Myers-Briggs or DISC or some of these personality profiling issues. And what you want to do is learn who your customers are. By the way, not every customer is the same, but you could probably drop them into several buckets or differentiate different personas based on how they interact and the type of business they do with you. And once you understand these personas, to be able to adapt to that personality, to adapt to that style, to adapt to the expectation, that's the secret. And by the way, this isn't rocket science. This isn't hard to do. It really comes down to understanding and then a little bit of training and a little bit of focus and a little bit of practice and a little bit of coaching and reinforcement of when you're doing it right, and make sure that behavior becomes repetitive again and again.
That's bang on. That's what we wanted to hear from you. And one of the questions which I think our viewers must want to know about is, what about the right set of tools and technologies one should have in their MarTech set? Well, I'm not asking the name of the tools. I would like you to mention what set of tools one must have
Sure.
in their MarTech stack.
So the tech stack shouldn't be a stack. And I know this is a general statement. I'll probably get in trouble for this. I think it should be very flat. It shouldn't be a stack at all. It should be one program that brings everything in together into one screen. And here's what I mean by that, especially in the customer support roles that agents have when they're taking care of customers. How many programs do they have to have open in order to work with the customer? How many screens? Now, I don't mind switching screens if it's within the same program, but how many different programs? In effect, just as there's always been complaints about departments within companies being siloed and separate, well, the same thing happens with software. It needs to integrate and all work together. So you want a good CRM, so you can, customer relationship management system, so that you can track and monitor a customer individually and have notes on them, know what they bought in the past, what their when they've called, what their questions were, what they plan to do in the future, anything about that customer. You need to have the ability to get answers to that customer's questions. And therefore, that needs to be a knowledge base. You shouldn't have to go to a separate program to get that. It should all be integrated. And that's just an example. One of the hot topics, and I don't know if we're going to get into it today or not, is ChatGPT and the technology that's behind, I would call AI supported customer service. It's one thing for a customer to have a digital experience where it's self-service, where AI might answer some questions with the chatbot. Simple questions like, did my product get shipped that I ordered? What's my balance in my checking account? Those are so easy to go online and get those answers. And there's lots of software programs that'll do that. I love it when AI supports the agent. And therefore, if I'm being asked a question by a customer, I know what prompt to put into the computer to get a response. And then it's my job as the agent to be able to interpret that, share that information in a way that just doesn't give the information, but builds that relationship with the customer. And I recently worked with a client, really fascinating company. They actually have AI taking care of the customer, generative AI, ChatGPT type technology. But you know what? Behind the scenes, there's an agent helping to make sure that the customer is getting the right information. Even though that customer may never talk to the agent, what's happening is the agent is supporting the AI, which I think is just incredibly brilliant. But back to something I talked about at the beginning of this answer, and that is, let's do what we can to bring everything into one place without the agent having to switch from screen to screen or program to program. I've said this for many years. The company that can figure out how to make that work is going to be very successful. And today there are a number of companies that can do that.
We cannot bypass the human touch, can we?
Right. Yeah. I really don't think that human touch is going to go away. If not for a very long time, maybe never. I think that's really important. Computers can't build relationships with people. Now, I say that because, hey, I don't know about you. I'm not ever going to guess anybody's age, but I know that today's generation is still, or the youngest generation is still interacting with people. And until there's a generation that chooses not to do so, which I don't know if that's going to come for quite a long time, we don't have to worry about losing jobs like wiping out the customer service agent industry. I think it's always going to be there. It's just going to be different.
So, also, if we talk about the Indian market, Shep, I would like to tell you that most of the marketers, they kind of face this issue of measuring the investments in these tools and technologies. So, what do you suggest should be the key metrics one should consider while measuring the investments in CX in these tools and technologies?
So, I think there's two questions in that one question. First of all, which tool or which metrics do we want to look at? I'm a big believer we want to make sure the customer's happy. I think average handle time, AHT, is a dangerous metric. If people are graded and they're compensated based on how fast they can get somebody off the phone, you're not going to give that customer the experience they deserve. However, there is, again, the balance between efficiency and happiness and a satisfied customer. So we need to make sure we focus on both. Jim Bush, who at the time when he worked for American Express was the worldwide senior VP of customer service. And he made the metric that was most important, basically NPS, Net Promoter Score. They would not get off the phone until that customer was happy and willing to recommend them because they did such a great job. And I believe that's a real important metric to look at. So I think that's really important. I said there was a couple of questions there. Oh yeah, here's the other one. I think I heard you say this, but you've got to go to leadership and you've got to say, okay, let's look at these numbers. And when we look at the numbers and we look at the technology that's available, will new technology make those numbers better? And if we make those numbers better, how does that impact the bottom line? What does that do to customer retention versus customer churn? What does that do to increase sales from existing customers? What does it do to a reputation that's bringing in new customers? If you take a look at that and you go to your leadership and you say, I want to invest in this technology, let me share with you some numbers, and take your current numbers as a benchmark and take a look at what happens with, what your average revenue is per customer, et cetera, and then take a look at numbers outside of your business that are more what I would call general trends that companies do. They research and they tell you that X% of customers that stay will spend more, and there's lots of research out there. When you combine all of that, you make a very compelling case to invest in money. Leadership, specifically the C-suite, they want to see how it impacts the bottom line. If you can't impact the bottom line, you're probably wasting your time going to the C-suite.
True that. And I also want to mention one thing. So India, it's witnessing a surge in digital payments and e-commerce. So how can businesses harness customer data from all these transactions to understand purchase patterns, preferences, and behaviors, and use that information to enhance the overall experience? And also, if you would like to highlight how to strike a balance between customer data and privacy, since this is the talk of the art. Yeah.
I mean, there's so much there. I think you're going to see privacy. It's already a big issue. I mean, I there's so much in that question, but let's focus on privacy, because I think as you look at generative AI, ChatGPT, you have to be so careful, because if a customer is going to talk to the computer and the computer is saving this information, interpreting the information, doing something with that information, there is a risk of a data breach or privacy breach. So we have to be really, really careful. Let's step outside of the company role for a moment. Let's talk about ChatGPT in general. It's been warned. People are being warned. If you ask ChatGPT a question and you start to interact and have a conversation with this machine, it's remembering everything that you talk about. So if you start to get personal with this machine, recognize that potentially, you're putting yourself out there for others. It's kind of like, what happens, there's an old expression here in the US, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, because it's such a crazy place. Well, what happens on Facebook stays on Facebook. What happens in ChatGPT could stay in ChatGPT. So remember that anything you put out there could potentially become public. So what companies need to do is they need to share information about how they're keeping the data private. how they're keeping their customers' information from being used by others, either by breach or by sale, because some companies will actually sell that information. And we have to get to a point where we trust the people we work with, as a customer, and the companies have to do everything they can to solidify that trust. So if there's, we can go on and tell you information, we could talk about breach and all that, but when it comes to trust, that may be one of your biggest assets. If you provide great service, if you make promises, keep those promises, if you meet the expectations, you're building trust with the customer. Your goal is to create confidence to make that customer want to do business with you again and again. So I'm getting off topic a little bit, but I do believe that when it comes to confidentiality, data breach, trust, it all ties into creating the experience that the customer feels comfortable with.
Great. I guess we have a few more minutes, so I'll just quickly ask my another question because I want to squeeze all the information in one go. That is not possible though. So, Shep, you're weaving a six tapestry that's both enchanting and enlightening. So now let's talk about customer retention, as it is a critical aspect of sustaining business success. So, considering the unique market dynamics, so what key strategies and actionable steps would you recommend for companies operating in diverse markets like India?
So retention is an interesting concept. You want customers to come back. I actually wrote a book called I'll Be Back, How to Get Customers to Come Back Again and Again. And I differentiate loyalty versus repeat business. Both of them are important. I would prefer to have a loyal customer, not just a repeat customer, because they're not the same. But once again, they're both important. You can't create loyalty until you get that customer come back again and again. So let's make sure we understand the difference between them. Why does a customer come back to us? What's the reason? We want to understand this. So if I am a retailer, and I'm going to just use this as an example, a general example, and I see a customer coming in day after day, I assume they're loyal. But what happens when they stopped? Why did they stop? Well, what I found out was my competitor opened one block closer to where the customer lived. So the customer was not loyal to my business. They were loyal to the location of my business. Same thing with companies that want to provide the lowest price. If they promise to give the lowest price, the moment they no longer have the lowest price, the customer is going to go find a lower price, because some customers, they want to hang on to that promise. So the idea behind that is they're not loyal to the company. They're loyal to what the price of the product is. So let's make sure we understand why customers come back to us. Are we so good that our customers are willing to drive an extra 5 miles to our place versus a competitor? So that's the concept of repeat versus loyalty. Now, what I want there's a company that I do business with. Never have dealt with them. It's all done through agents. It's all done customer service support, that type of thing. Never talk to anybody person to person. But here's what I know. Whenever I call them, I never have to wait more than a minute. They respect their customer's time. Whenever I call them, if the person doesn't have the answer, they tell me they're going to go get the answer. They tell me when they're going to call me back, and they always do. I have this confidence about this company, and yet I've never met anybody at that company. They've given me the experience that provides respect, and that garners, and my response to that respect is, I trust you because you always do what you say you're going to do. You're always on time, and therefore I'm going to give you more business. And I wouldn't think of taking a chance on doing business with anyone else.
Okay, and that's a valid point on customer loyalty. And since I can vouch for it, as I'm an Indian, I look for lesser price than the brand loyalty. So,
but let me ask a question.
Sure.
If the price was just a little bit more, but you love the people that you did business with,
So then
what would you do?
I'm a loyal person, I must say.
Exactly. And so that's the point. A great service experience can help make price less relevant.
So, and Shep, you painted a CX masterpiece with your wisdom expertise. So, as we bid adieu to this sensational conversation, we would love to hear your thoughts on the future of CX. If I already briefed you about the kind of market India is, so what emerging trends or technology do you predict will shape the CX landscape? What do you think?
First of all, recognize this. Our customers don't compare you to a direct competitor. They compare you to the best service they've ever had from any company or any brand. So if I call this company and they always answer the phone within 1 minute, they always get me the information I need, they have now set the bar for any other company that I call and ask for support. And we need to recognize that. So it's not just about our competitors. Can we try to be best in industry? Let's put together that. Thoughts on the future. People always ask me, is AI going to take jobs away from the customer service world? And the short answer is, yeah, there's going to be a few jobs that are replaced. But the smart companies are recognizing that this technology is being used to support the experience, not replace the whole customer experience with people. So in the 1960s, Barclays Bank in England came out with the ATM, the machine that you can go to and will give you money if you need it out of your bank account. And they thought, oh my gosh, no more tellers in the bank. You can go to a bank, there's no tellers. But guess what? Every bank I go in today has tellers. They also have an ATM machine. It's still there. So understand your customers, know what they want, recognize that human-to-human experience is going to be the fallback if you try to create digital first. By the way, I'm totally fine with that. Create digital first. Teach your customers to go digital first, but let them know that if you need our help, we are here to take care of you. So I think that's going to continue. And the final comment I want to make is, whenever the beginning of customer service started many years, centuries ago, somebody had a problem, they needed help. That's not going to change. 1,000 years from now, somebody's going to have a problem, they're going to need help. They want to be happy when it's over. Now, the way we go about that is probably going to change, but the beginning and the end, they are exactly the same.
Okay, that's great. And I guess, Chef, you have rocked our interview with your CX genius, wit, and boundless energy. Thank you so much for gracing us with your presence today. And it's 7:30. I guess we have finished in time. Thank you so much.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you very much. You have a great one. Wishing you the very, very best.
Thanks a lot. Thank you so much.